Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits news video. Well, I thought I would mix in this video in between your newer suggestions because it has to do with a fascinating theme, a fascinating idea that I thought has been going on for a while, but it finally confirms it with this article here. And I also mix in my own real world experience because I ran into this a couple of years back. But basically it has to do with this. It's an article highlighting a church and one of the reverends there who has basically canceled or forced the cancellation of some ghost tours around their location. And it highlights the theme that I was mentioning where we have a lot of people that are interested in ghost hunts and going ghost hunting, but at the same time, there's a lot of other people that find them nuisance. And so when that happens, when you have these two heads butting at the same time, here you have something like this occurring. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. In this case, the most haunted village in England and the church associated with it, basically pulling the plug on one of the ghost tours there. So for starters, I'll include the link below. If you want to have a chance, it's from Yahoo. You'll be able to see more information related to this, but it has to do with a location located there in Prestbury, England. It's been dubbed the most haunted village in England because there's a church, which you're looking at here, that has a lot of history associated with it. It's called St. Mary's Church. And if you go there to that location, apparently you're going to hear several items related in the world of paranormal. You're going to hear horse sounds, like in other words, the beating of horses, the sound that they make whenever they're running on the ground there in the dead of night. You're also going to hear whispers. You're going to hear screams, apparently from some murdered lovers in the past. You're going to have these breezes, almost like being touched when you're around that location, especially apparently when you're there in the cemetery. Photographs have been taken of paranormal sightings there as well. But the most famous one has to do with a figure that's known as the Black Abbot. Apparently this is a hooded figure who roams the premises of those churches, and in looking at more information on this Black Abbot online, apparently does it on a specific set of calendar dates. It got me interested. I might talk about this Black Abbot within another video coming soon. But all of these specific traits, all of these paranormal traits have made this a hotspot when it comes to ghost hunting, not just for amateurs, but also for this. You're looking at it now. In this case, it was a ghost tour company known as Cotswold Ghost Tours there at a location nearby called, Gloucester, something village, and there at that location you'll be able to then take this ghost tour, and it made it seem like it's a walking ghost tour, hour and a half walking ghost tour. You get to visit various locations there with the gentleman running the tour, and when that happens you'll eventually come across this cemetery. I totally imagine that this cemetery was the highlight of the entire evening, where you probably visit a lot of bars outside, maybe some places that were closed, like stores at night, but then this church would have been the main one. And that kind of confirmed my suspicions, because apparently the news article later states that this church image and some of its photographs were being used within the tour itself to promote the tour to others. So this tour has been going on for a little while, apparently for a couple of years, but eventually it caught notice. It was this gentleman that you're looking at here that caught notice of it. His name is Reverend Nick Bromfield, and he is the reverend there for that church itself, for St. Mary's Church. Well, somewhere along the way, between the ghost tour starting and then the reverend catching attention of what was going on, he was not liking what the ghost tour was about. Apparently they would go to that location there, they would go straight to the cemetery, and what he was not liking was the fact that several things were occurring that were what he considered bad. For example, they would have the investigations right next to some new tombstones, brand new tombstones, people that just had someone pass away and they buried them right there on the cemetery. Well, here are all the people within the ghost tour now walking on top and across these new tombstones, and he felt that was a huge disrespect. Also, he was stating that some of the tales that the ghost tour was mentioning, some of the stories may have been, I don't know if it was embellished, but a lot of the more risque stuff, a lot of the stuff that stands out, maybe more violent stuff, was being highlighted within the stories, and he felt that that was not something that should have been placed within the actual tour. In fact, this is some of his direct quotes. He says, "Frankly, ghost tours have no part in a place of Christian worship, and they don't don't belong in a Christian churchyard. He said, we don't want people's stories about ghosts, specters, and poltergeists. It's not good for families, nor is it good for the many children we are blessed to welcome every single week. And then he ended it by stating that he was saddened to see our church used as a backdrop to promote ghost tours to also some of the other children around that area. So things eventually just came to a head. The reverend and the ghost tour owner just kept butting heads. It finally seemed like there was some, I guess, peace between them, where there was a set of agreements that was made where the ghost tour operator would no longer go through the cemetery or through certain parts of the church, and then also the images of the church wouldn't be used, and then the reverend was kind of okay with that, but even that ended up being changed afterward, either by the ghost tour operator or somewhere along the way the reverend decided that wasn't still enough, in other words, and then that was it. Eventually the ghost tour operator stated that he had to cancel the tour because, get this, he received, according to him, voicemails from the Reverend stating that he was going to book himself on the tour and then sabotage the tour on a continuous basis. Something along those lines. It was a little vague when I was reading the information, but it made it seem like he was going to make himself his own guest within the ghost tour and then just ruin the experience for everyone. And so after that happened, then the ghost tour was canceled, and that's been it. That's been the last associated with that specific ghost tour. Who knows if it'll be back up later on. He thinks that it will, that there'll be something else coming soon afterward. And that's because it ties into the topic I was mentioning earlier, as far as a lot of people interested in ghost hunts, but a lot of other people finding them nuisances. So here's what I mean. So ghost tours are definitely a hot business right now, thanks to the shows like Ghost Adventures, of course, and then Ghost Hunters, and then Most Haunted, A Ghost Story. All these places, all these other TV shows that are out there as well, they all highlight all these amazing, fascinating stories and locations of people having encounters with ghosts. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge fan of them. A lot of you out there are fans of them too, and it creates this almost need for people to go visit those locations and then do a little amateurish ghost hunts on their own. I do them. Other people do them as well. I'm part of a group as well that we go to certain locations. But as I mentioned in the past, it's always in the agreement that it's 100% legit, meaning if it's a location that's cordoned off either by a gate, a fence, something else just preventing access, then you're not supposed to cross over, obviously, into it. And Ghost Adventures has highlighted it as well in one of their episodes with featuring a guest there that did that exactly. And then he had to explain that he was put in jail because of it afterward and then given some kind of tickets, and now it's on its record. So I always go things on a legitimate route, and then the places that I go to that allow you in, those are the ones that are with permission, and they have a set of rules, and they have even sometimes places that you can stay overnight. It's all in accordance with them. That's the key point. It's an agreement between that location and whoever is a ghost hunter to come across and be able to do their things together. But other places are finding them a nuisance, and that's because inadvertently or purposefully, they are now involved in those locations, and you have people suddenly coming across their areas and they're completely just fed up with it. Like, they don't want to have these people to suddenly come across their areas, wherever it is, trespassing in their areas, even when they're told they're not supposed to, and then that creates conflict afterward. I've seen it with some of the cemeteries here in the Texas area that I was planning on visiting. I've noticed, though, that some of the stories now state that the cemeteries are completely closed off. Like, where it used to be an open cemetery that you could just investigate on your own, there's now been said, like, some kind of fences set up, places that have these areas cordoned off, and then that way you're not supposed to come across it at all. And it will even say no trespassing, stuff along those lines. That's because the people that have that kind of encounters, they don't want to have these people just continuously just come across it, and then when that happens, then that becomes just a nuisance on their part. The real life example that I ran into it was this. A couple of years back, I was taking a walking ghost tour there in San Antonio, and we went across several neighborhoods that were haunted because of their age. Like, some of the houses there were from the late 1800s, early 1900s, and we got to see some of those locations from outside. But sure enough, as we were walking through one of the neighborhoods, one of the neighbors actually came out right there, and he confronted the ghost tour operator, who was using a little mini microphone with a speaker at the time in order to communicate with everyone. And they kind of got into a little tiff because the neighbor was stating that the operator was using something at a volume that was higher than it should have been. In other words, some kind of noise volume ordinance was being broken, and the operator was stating no, he's staying within guidelines, and he even had permission from the city with regards to getting some kind of license for the ghost tour. They went at it for a little bit, and so this all happened just pretty much out of the blue while we were walking between one location to another. And in fact, these pictures you're looking at are from that type of location itself. I wasn't able to take any picture of the encounter itself because it happened so abruptly, and it almost ended as abruptly, but still, it goes to show that here you have ghost tours that are operating within the neighborhood, and here you have the neighborhood fighting back. They don't want these people there. They don't want these ghost hunts happening that late at night. To them, they just see it as probably in their minds, they just see us as a bunch of crazy people just walking around at night trying to find things that they don't believe in. But that's where two heads butt together, and it leads to these results. So this article, finding it there on Yahoo, confirms that yes, this stuff is happening. Ghost business is hot. It creates good business. All you have to do is just find the location, purport it to be haunted, start selling tickets, whether you visit the inside or not, or whether it's a walking tour and you just visit the outside, it doesn't matter. The ghost tickets, the tickets will sell to any kind of ghost hunters, and then when that happens, then the surrounding people are impacted from it. But that's pretty much it. I wanted to highlight this article here because it's a fascinating topic for me, and if I find more stories related like this, where in this case two parties are fighting against each other and it forces the cancellation of a ghost tour, something along those lines, then I'll definitely start sharing it here. But I'm interested in hearing if anyone else has those kind of encounters before. If you're a ghost hunter, if you've gone on these kind of ghost hunts, if you've run into that same situation where other places and other people have come out fighting against those that visit their location, please post those comments below. Let me know if anyone has those specific encounters too. I imagine there has to be some out there, considering how popular these things are becoming, these ghost hunts are becoming, and then of course the other people that are finding them just continue nuisances. All right, everyone. Thanks again as always. Take care.